California will defend its people, declared Assembly Speaker Anthony Rendon and Senate President pro tempore Kevin de Leon, both Democrats. We are not going to allow one election to reverse generations of progress. For the next 10 months, much ado was made over California's pugilistic posture toward the president. Ambitious left coast politicians seized on every available opportunity to remind voters that they opposed the man in the Oval Office. Again and again, California touted itself the one place powerful enough and progressive enough, with Democrats leading the entire government to thwart the commander-in-chief. But how much of this resistance was rhetorical, and how much was substantive? Now's the time to ask. On Friday, California's legislative year finally ended. Lawmakers departed Sacramento for their home districts, not to return until January. In their wake, they left a trail of legislative successes and failures that hold important lessons for national Democrats still figuring out how to move forward under Trump's rule. The main takeaway? That even in a progressive paradise like California, where Republicans are almost entirely powerless, the Democratic Party is deeply divided over how, exactly, to resist, with protest or with pragmatism. On Sunday, Rendon described 2017 as California's most productive and progressive legislative session in memory. He had a point. Legislators sent hundreds of bills to Governor Jerry Brown, nearly all of which addressed key liberal priorities: lower drug costs, free community college, more parental leave, increased education funding, more affordable housing. It's also true that most of Sacramento's big, headline-grabbing moves wound up being about Trump in one way or another. Over the course of 2017, California Democrats introduced more than 35 stat-off resistance bills meant to block the president's policy agenda. 4 have since become law or part of the state budget, and 8 more await the governor's signature. The list goes on. When Trump's Education Secretary Betsy DeVos moved to roll back Obama-era Title IX guidance, Sacramento beefed up state regulations designed to prevent sexual harassment and sexual violence at schools and colleges. And after immigration and customs enforcement officers stepped up their raids under Trump, Sacramento passed a bill that would transform California into a sanctuary state of sorts by limiting communication between law enforcement and federal immigration authorities. The legislature's resolutions, which do not carry the force of law, were even more antagonistic toward Trump. One demanded that Congress censure the president for his equivocal response to last month's violent white supremacist rally in Charlottesville. Another seized on his popular vote loss to call for the end of the Electoral College. All in all, Sacramento passed more than 24 Trump-bashing resolutions before adjourning for the year. And yet, despite the flurry of anti-Trump activity, serious fissures developed over the course of the session between two types of Democrats. Call them the protesters and the pragmatists. The protesters, led by de Leon, tended to be concentrated in the more liberal state Senate. Donald Trump is a threat to everything that we stand for as a great state, de Leon recently told the Los Angeles Times. So, it's not just as president of the Senate, or as a senator, but more importantly as an ordinary citizen and son of a single immigrant mother do I take these positions. Meanwhile, Rendon emerged as brake on the Senate's ambitions, declaring as early as February that he was tired of talking about Trump and publicly fretting last week that, at times, Democrats had devolved into symbolism. As a result, many anti-Trump bills were scaled back from their original sweeping premise, as the Times put it. Others flamed out entirely. De Leon's sanctuary state bill squeaked through at the last minute, but only after the governor and police softened its protections for undocumented immigrants convicted of certain crimes. De Leon's proposal to enshrine federal air and water protections into state law, a preemptive response to likely rollbacks from the Trump administration, fizzled without a vote Friday night. And 2 bills meant to punish any private company willing to aid Trump in his bid to build a wall on the country's southern border also failed to advance. Sacramento's most spectacular flameout, however, involved single-payer healthcare, as we previously reported. With Trump's push to repeal Obamacare dominating the agenda in Washington, D.C., and California Democrats suddenly enjoying supermajorities in both houses of the state legislature, two state senators earlier this year introduced a bill, SB 562, designed to wipe out California's private insurance market and create a single-payer system. The old barriers, it seemed, had finally broken down. The stars were aligned. But after SB 562 passed the Senate, Rendon, who insists he supports single-payer, abruptly intervened in late June and shelved the bill for the remainder of the 2017 session. Governor Brown, meanwhile, piled on. "Where do you get the extra money?" Brown told reporters. "You take a problem and say I'm going to solve it by something that's even a bigger problem, which makes no sense." Sacramento's single-payer implosion neatly illustrates the larger conflict that will continue to bedevil national Democrats as they struggle to chart a path back to power in the age of Trump. Is protesting the president with passionate rhetoric and pie-in-the-sky policy proposals the best way to regain control in Washington, D.C.? Or is pragmatism the smarter play? But Nancy Pelosi, the leader of the House Democrats, and a Californian herself, did not. "I don't think single-payer is a litmus test," Pelosi told The Washington Post, instead calling on Democrats to release a wide range of proposals to fix and improve the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. "It isn't helpful to tinkle all over the acai right now," Pelosi added in an interview with MSNBC. "Right now we need to support the Affordable Care Act and defeat what the Republicans are doing." This isn't the only time Pelosi has angered the protest wing of her party. Earlier this year, Pelosi refused to require that every Democrat support abortion rights, noting that many of her relatives are not pro-choice. "You think I'm kicking them out of the Democratic Party," she scoffed. And in recent weeks, Pelosi and her Senate counterpart, Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, have struck a pair of deals with President Trump, first on the debt ceiling and then on DACA. In response, angry protesters confronted Pelosi in San Francisco on Monday, chanting, "All of us or none of us," and "We are not a bargaining chip." Pelosi's strategy is fairly simple: accomplish as much as possible, given the circumstances, then let the electoral chips fall where they may. "You can never satisfy everybody," she told the Post last week. "We don't have a responsibility to get nothing done." Whether that sort of pragmatism will pay off at the ballot box remains to be seen. Meanwhile, the protests will continue in California and beyond.